The data import section is exactly what it says. This is where we import associates, leads, clients, or clients and policies as a combination, as well as you can import your time clock CSV for ROI off of your employees, because the system already knows how much money they made, what their AV was. They just need a time clock file imported, and they can tell you what that employee's value monetarily was on an hour by hour basis. Data setup. This is where we're going into the back end and configuring the vendors, the products, the plans. We can set up actions for posting. This is where we can modify mappings for the Accord forms and things like that. So these are very in-depth, but I will try to hit all of them fairly quickly. The vendor setup is exactly that. This is where your vendors are located at, not your associates, not your affiliated companies. These are the vendors that you are selling their products or promoting their plans. We go into their record or create a new one with the green plus located in the upper right hand corner as always. Then we define the name and the business address, city, state, zip code. We can put their website, their quoting link, and any pertinent notes. Is it an active vendor? Do you force policy number on active policies for these vendors? You've got email, phone, and fax. You can also retain the licensing, the sales, the support, and the underwriting information right here on these. Those are always nice when you have them filled in. That way your associates can always go under resources and they can click vendor information, and any vendor that they are appointed with will show up on their list, and any information that you've added to the vendor for the licensing, the sales, the support, and the underwriting will render on that page, so then they don't have to come and call you or wait for a response for an email when you're out of the office, because they're trying to find the contact information of the support department for the Intruity vendor. From there, we can set up the products. As always, green plus, and you can edit here. The product is just the description and then the product type. The description is purely based upon what makes most sense to the agency owner. And then the product type is it an auto, a building, an associate, a dental, a health, a life, a Medicare? And then if it's pertinent to just specific states, as always, you can select them, but none selected means all by default. Most normally, people will talk about homeowners insurance or gap insurance or a lot of different types of insurance, and they're, well, I don't see that product type. Well, but after a couple of questions, you can really get them to understand that HOA insurance is still associate. Group insurance is still health insurance, or it's still life insurance. I understand it's group and not individual, but as far as the product is concerned, they all kind of really boil down to these main 7 right here. If we need to add other products, we can do that. Once your products are set up, then you add your individual plans, whether this would be your for your HMOs, your PPOs, whether it's a group, whether it's an individual, whether it's a 10-term, a 15-term, a 20-term. That's going to be based upon the products that are being sold by that particular agency or that particular affiliate of Agency Intels. And then we can control those, as always, plus in the upper right, and the edit icon here. As you can see, it gives you a product that you can select from the product list, the plan description. If there is a premium default, you can put that here, and then when somebody goes to sell or to write that plan, it will automatically fill in the premium for them. Does this count as a policy or an ancillary? On the graphs, for the home page, for production reports, for things like that, does this particular plan count as a policy, an ancillary, or both, or neither? They might be one or the other. And then how are you calculating the AV? Is it based upon annual or exact premium? These are radio buttons. You cannot do both. It is one or the other. Once those are all set up, people are ready to start putting plans into the system. Now, the commission setup, this is where the commission rules are going to be created. As always, here's the plus. You can edit. There is one new icon, that's duplicate. Gives you a starting point. So you create one rule, and then you can duplicate it and then make a few changes. That way you're not having to create the same or a similar rule 8 or 10 times. Now, I'm not going to go too in-depth into the commission rules, but I will give you a quick brief overview of what everything does. Commissions is a completely separate training in and of itself. Normally, the people who are setting up larger agencies aren't the ones who are paying commissions. They have a department for that, and we schedule the training with that department because they're the people that need to understand how to use the commissions. Description is, again, it is arbitrary, has no functionality. It's just for administrative staff to be able to glance at it and go, oh, well, that's the 2017 Molina renewal PM. Is it active? Does it show on the schedule? Or is it an admin fee? All of those things are checkboxes right here. You can drill down. It will obviously do the vendor and the product for you by default because we were inside of that vendor. And we only have one product. If we had multiple products, then you'd have to select the product, and you could select the plan. Now, you don't have to if this is just a vendor-specific rule. So anytime that I get paid this amount from Intruity, it's all going to be paid out the same way. Now, up here at the top, I can control that this rule only applies when the application is from this date and to this date. If it's outside of those parameters, won't use this rule. Same with the application month. Some vendors pay you differently. If it's within the first 6 months, they pay you a different comp if it's in the last 6 months. So then we say when application month is from 0 to 6, then this rule applies. Then we create another one and we say when the application month is from 6 to 12, and then it'll use this rule. Same thing with the payment date. You can control that this only adheres when the payment date is in between A and B, and then uses a different rule for payment outside of those dates. So if you're running, we'll call it a promotion or a bonus, something along those lines, and you get paid 20% of the premium from the vendor, and the company normally takes the top 5%. Well, if the payment is between July and August, instead of the company clearing 5%, maybe it only clears 1%, and the other 4% will go to the associate. But that's only a rule that applies between these date ranges. Advanced months, if it's left blank, it is the vendor default, or you can define the number of advanced months for this particular commission rule. You can also add states. That way we can say that this vendor commission rule only applies in these 3 states. And again, all if empty. If you have commission categories that are active and created, you can say that this only applies to this particular commission category, or just this one specific agent, or it only applies when the lead source is BB Direct. Then down here, this is how the agency is getting paid. Is it by a percent or by rate? If it's percentage, is it percentage of the premium or percentage of the commission? Am I paying on the total comp or no? Pay on total comp is sometimes they have the agency will actually be licensed or contracted under another agency, so they'll get one portion of the commission from the carrier themselves, and then they will get a bonus percentage from the agency that they're contracted through. So the vendor might send you only 15% and then the agency that you're licensed through will send you the extra 5%. So the 20% I mentioned earlier. So am I paying on the total comp, or am I only paying it on the 15%? So if I'm getting 15 and the statement, oops, that would be the other way around. If the company percent is 20, but I'm getting on only 15 on the statement, am I paying on the total comp? And then my hierarchy down here at the bottom will represent maybe 18, and it doesn't look like I'm negative because there is still 5% going in. What you're most normally going to see is that the company and the statement percent are the same. They don't need to check the total comp. And then they're paying out down here at the bottom in percent. And again, based upon hierarchy level, who is getting paid how much. The rate is the same. If it's $20, it's $20. And the associate rate, this is actually going to be a sunsetted feature. We are removing it very soon. So please ignore the associate rate. Everything is now paid out on a hierarchy basis down to the bottom portion. And that is pretty much what you need to know about the commission portion. And again, when we get to the commission portion, it is an in-depth one-on-one training that is handled by either the account manager or a tier 2 and above. Attachments. You can attach things to vendors. The nice thing about vendors is when you attach it, you get a type. If you make it a licensing contract, then it's available in the resources under licensing contract. If you make it a training document, same thing. Under resources, you can look at licensing contract or training documents, and then those are available to all employees that have the ability to access the resources tab. Notes are going to be something that's just specific to that vendor, things that you don't want anybody else to see that doesn't have administrative control of the agency. Maybe they're reviewing your contract for an increase. You want to follow up on that. Maybe that's a note that you make on the vendor. There was a discrepancy in the last commission file. You don't want that put out as a notification so all your agents can read it, but it is something you want to follow up on. That way you can make a note, and it's only viewable by people who have the company setup access. Alright, so custom field names, very simple. We have custom field locations in 4 places: customer, policy, lead, and employee. They are all there. You can use them as much as you like. They have no designation or names to them in the user interface because we call them custom field 1, custom field 2, and have them on the appropriate table. You can put a name to that custom field box. You can define if the box is expanded by default or closed. That's what the expanded box does, is it forces it to be open when the page loads. If it is a required field, which means they're not allowed to update or move away from this record until that field is filled in. And then you can obviously control which employee types it is required for. Alrighty. Setup actions. The setup actions is giving you the ability to automate some things. If you've got a third-party vendor that you're using for a phone system or mail merge, things like that, you can create a post string for them based upon the actions. As always, you can add a new action with the plus. I'm going to look at the one that's already here. The name is nothing more than aesthetic for you. The description describes what it's going to do. Active, obviously, if it's an active action or not. Then what we are doing over here is we're deciding what company or companies this applies to. And what I want it to do I want to post, redirect, email, or text? And I want to email, and I will select the template that I want to email based upon what? Is it a lead in, a lead manual, or a lead result? So these are pertinent to the lead system. So when a lead in, that's an API post. this string will happen. The lead manual is for a CSV upload or for when a lead is manually created inside of Agency Intel. And then lead result is going to be when a lead is dispositioned. Now, when that happens, what do I want to do? I can send out an email. I can also do a post, and when I do a post, I need to use the post string. I can do a post and a get method. There are tag instructions right here that allow you to better define what you can use inside of a post string, as well as the header instructions are in there as well. If there are any questions, you can obviously shoot an email over to support and Truity, and the ticket will be escalated to a tier 2 or a network or a system admin to be able to answer those questions. Action filter, that's going to filter out. You can control that this only happens when application DOB is not in, and then put your string here. Again, if you're not really well versed in SQL, maybe it's better to ask the question of the appropriate employee to get the right answer, so you're not making actions that do nothing, and then you've upset employees and clients because they think that the system is doing what they're supposed to, and it was purely based upon a misconfigured action. The action schedule, it does exactly that. It will allow you to pick the day and the time from and to when it's active. Making sure to, normally to better help with FCC regulations about communication and things like that. You're not allowed to contact people outside of certain hours, so on and so forth. And moreover, you don't want to tick people off. You want them to be a happy customer. Alrighty, required fields. That allows you to pick the page, who the specific profile types are, and then the field name. Now, you may need some assistance from, again, technical support to be able to find out what the actual field name is for the field that you're wanting to require, but this allows you to force a specific field on a lead, an associate, a policy, on a customer to be required, so they cannot submit that record without that required field. It's for data homogenization, making things that they are where they are supposed to be. Accord forms, this is going to be one that most people aren't going into, primarily because this is the mapping for the accord forms. This is not how accord forms are utilized. That's why it's in setup. And this will allow you to, will allow the customer to remap or upload new forms, whether they're accord or not. If they have a writable PDF that they would like to auto-generate, they can upload and map that through our accord form, and then they can create these PDFs on the fly, very similar to what we do with accord forms, which is take the information in the database, we take the PDF or the binary of that PDF, and then we replace those fields that would have said first name, last name, address, address to, and we replace it with the pertinent data before the PDF is generated, giving you the ability to email, fax, or print off a standard copy of an accord form, certificate of liability or things like that, while the customer is still sitting inside of your agency. Commission categories, we've talked about those a couple of times, is when you want to segment the category of the commission. You create a category, you name it, you add a description so it makes sense to you, and then when those commission entries are put into those categories, you can report off of just those specific categories later on. Licensed classes. This is going to be the type of license that you hold. Licenses have different classes, just like a driver's license has your standard, your CDL, your chauffeur, and then there are variations thereof for motorcycle, for boat, and things like that. Licensing in the insurance space has the same. There's a different license to sell Medicare than there is to sell health. If you want to sell health and life, then there is another license for that. Property and casualty has 2 or 3 different types of licenses, whether you are someone who can handle customers, like a receptionist, whether you can actually bind the policy, or whether you can own an agency. You have to be licensed for equine insurance, which is horses. You got a couple of customers that do that. So, and in here you can control what licensing class is, and then you can define when you add a license to a vendor what class it belongs into. Again, for reporting purposes, so you can say who has a 440 from the associate manager. You can do an associate manager report and say license class of 440, and now I know all of my employees that have a 440. The enrollment method list, same thing when you're selling a policy. How are they enrolling? Was it through direct pay, credit card, things like that? Again, primarily for reporting capability, being able to control exactly the amount of information, so then when I need to look at that information later, I can ensure that I'm only looking at what I need to and not a bunch of fluff data that I now have to aggregate a CSV after I export it. The policy status list is going to be the statuses of a policy. And then inside of here, it is the description. Again, is it pending or is it in force and active? Does it change the status to active when receiving commissions? So this pending is changed to active when commissions is received. So anytime a commission record comes in and the policy that it's paying is in a pending status, the system will automatically change it to active. The same works on the opposite side. Change to canceled when chargeback is 10% or greater. We understand that sometimes the vendor will, pay out the full 6 months for the policy, and then their math was wrong, so they were 13 cents off, so they do a chargeback for 13 cents, something like that. When it's just to keep the books right on both sides, definitely don't want that policy to be put as canceled. That's why we give you the percentage threshold. As always, you can add with the plus, you can edit, and then delete if necessary. Customer status list, very similar to policy status list. It allows you to define what the status of a customer is. Very helpful for when a customer becomes deceased. You don't want to pull a birthday list for customers that are deceased. You mail out a birthday card to somebody who is no longer on this plane of existence. You may get some very, very unhappy phone calls from the spouse, parental, or significant other that received that birthday card with your insensitivity. So, just little things that over the years of us doing business we have seen cause issues for our current clients, so we make the necessary software modifications to ensure that we are mitigating those probabilities at every possible point. Lead distribution, it's the older way of doing things. Like we do call campaigns now where it really is an on-demand active lead pool. It is an ever-evolving, artificially intelligent monster, for lack of a better way to describe it. Lead distribution is archaic. It might as well be pen and pencil. When a lead comes into the system, I have a rule, and it goes to you. Now, I might have a rule that says you get 15 leads, and you're normally one of my best producers, so when the leads come in, I kind of filter out the priority leads and send those 15 over to you. Well, you forgot to tell me that you're going to be in Spain this week and next week, so I'm sending you 15 premium paid leads a week and receiving no correspondence from you. Now I've set up the lead distribution rules, and the system is doing it by default, and you got 30 leads that were paid a premium because you're a better salesman. And at the end of the day, they could have gone to anybody and still been worked better than you being on vacation in Spain. But as always, you can create a lead distribution rule with the plus. You can edit any rule right here. The description comes up once you've created the rule, then it will bring you to this page, but you have to have a description to be able to create the rule. Is there an email notification generated for the associates that you add down here at the bottom? Priority, sort order priority as always. The smaller the number, the higher it is on the list. Is there a post to the URL or to a URL when this rule happens? So maybe you're doing some franchise reporting and you want to have your franchisees report to a specific URL, then you have them use this lead distribution URL to post information back to you. Or maybe you're a franchisee and you're having to post this information up to a corporate, and then you can use this URL. Same with an API post string. Just make sure you configure the parameters correctly, and then it'll work. Maximum per day. This is the maximum number of leads to be given in any one of these 7 days that are down here, with a maximum of, so you might do a max of 7 per day with a maximum of 30 for the week. Obviously that math doesn't add up to 7 per 7, but they're independent controls. So then if he gets only 1 on Monday, he can get 7 on Tuesday and Wednesday, and so on, until he gets up to that 30, because he missed 5 initially on day 1, or 6 because it did say 1 the other night. Charge amount. Again, the older model is I pay for the leads, and then you pay me for the leads that I give to you. So you can define exactly how much is coming out for each lead that was posted and to what category you want to mark that as lead pool. So for each lead I send you, it might be $15 for your lead pool. I can filter this out by specific associates or specific lead types with these states and lead sources. So the associates is who it's going to go to, and it only applies to lead types of demo request. Or only, doesn't matter what the type of the source is, I need this to apply to all leads that happen in California. I might be doing territorial zoning, and I have 2 people in California. So I do California, maximum of 7 per day, 30 per week for the 2 associates that I have over there. And then the rest fails over to my call center that are making calls from here local as opposed to in the state. Same thing with lead sources. You can filter out by lead source specifically. Hierarchy is one of the last big ones. Sometimes it's hard for people to understand, but hierarchy is how we pay commissions. So the way I try to explain it to people is only create the levels of hierarchy that are pertinent to levels of people being paid. Hierarchy is different than associate types. I might have an associate type of accounting or technical support or receptionist or customer service rep. Those people don't get paid commissions. Those are hourly based employees, so they don't need to have a level of hierarchy. I have my associate, I have my supervisor, I have my manager, I have my regional or promoting manager, and then I have my director. Normally you're going to be, the standard hierarchy for a smaller agency. So the agent's the one who gets the largest portion. They're writing the plan. The supervisor is the one that's directly doing most of the training. They probably get like 1.5%. The manager gets a small override because it's their team. They're the one that has to answer for complaints and things like that. And then obviously you've got your promoting manager and your director. They're getting a small portion as well because they're the ones who are marketing the products, getting new products available. They're the ones who hold the corporate level license so everybody can get paid, things like that. But again, the plus in the upper right hand corner allows you to add, and then you can modify. It's a description, what it looks like. Is it an associate level? Does it allow to split commissions? You might be splitting commissions from a manager, a supervisor, or an agent standpoint. but anything above that may not even allow split commissions, so I can't split commissions with a director, and a director can't split commissions with me. Sort order, again, where you want it to populate in the list. The smaller the number, the higher it is on the list. Alright, just had a couple of quick sections left here. Looks like task type, predictive dialer map. Task types are going to be exactly that. You can create tasks for various things. You can create tasks for associates. You can create a task for a lead, for a customer, for a policy. So based upon those different 4 points that you can affiliate tasks with, you can probably have 4 or 5 different task types for each of those different task locations. Like an employee task might be, a client follow-up, a contracting submittal, a union dues paid. These are tasks that people need to fix or finish. Task for a policy is, 30-day follow-up, 60-day follow-up to make sure that they got their cards in the mail. They might have a task for a 1-month review prior to policy expiration. Things like that you can create tasks for that you may want categories of, again, so you can report off of them later. A hardware project, a bug fix. I'm going to pull a report on how many task types of bug fix in the last 3 months. And then if I see a lot of bug fix task types based upon work being done by a specific employee, then maybe I need to review this work process with this specific employee as their review is coming up for availability. Or again, you can look at task types that were created by or for a specific employee, things like that. The last big one is the predictive dialer map. It's not even really a big one, it's a small one. Most of predictive dialer is pretty intuitive at this point thus far. This just allows you to, this is the predictive dialer disposition. We call it answering machine. What did you call it inside of agency intel? Was it left message? When they select, when an answering machine is left from the predictive dialer, what do you want the asterisk to send back to the CRM so we keep that data the same on both sides? So this is how we do that. On this side, we have, this is what the predictive dialer is calling it. What are you calling it on this side? So no answer, invalid. All of these are created and enabled in an AI instance by default out of the box, or when we create a database for an associate or for an associate affiliate of ours. This can be modified, but by default it is set up to work. So those are all of the individual breakdowns of just the company setup portion, what they do, where you get to them, and what their primary functions are utilized for. You can get to a few of them from other drop-down menus, like we talked about location, we talked about vendor information. You get your IVAN set up over here, resources, you can get to the licensing contracts and the training documents as well as vendor information. So there are different areas where they would be accessed from after the configuration, but as far as the configuration is concerned, it's always going to be utilities and company setup. And then once you get in here, the company list that I was telling you about, you can get to from clicking company list. But you do have to have other companies created for there to be a list. If not, it defaults to the company ID of 1, which is everybody's. And then you can just go through the company setup. And once you've knocked out the main points with lead types, lead sources, creating your call campaigns, you've got to set up your hierarchy to be able to pay people, and then your vendor products and plans so people can start putting things into the system. But once those 7 or 8 key points of information are configured, people can start utilizing the system as you more refine your commission rules and set up your your data display for the TVs, your templates for emailing, your scripts, your rebuttals, things like that that can be done after the system is being utilized, as opposed to those key information that has to be ready before anyone can even use the CRM.